Listen in as John Yakim explains the benefits of natural hormone replacement. We're here with John Yakim, and we're so grateful because he knows more about women's bodies than I do. And I have a question for him. John, why do I feel bloated at certain times of the month?
Well, that comes from an estrogen dominance. Estrogen causes you to retain water. If your estrogen is proportionately too high for the amount of progesterone that you have at that time, then you're going to tend to retain water. Now, if you're on supplementation, then you can drop down the level of the estrogen if other symptoms will allow. If dropping the symptoms brings on your hot flashes, then you have to go the other way and use more progesterone, increase the amount of progesterone.
What about the different types of, I've seen in the marketplace progesterone creams and topically applied different hormone creams. What's your opinion of those?
Progesterone creams that are available over the counter are limited by law to a maximum level. They do have some natural progesterone in there, but it's a very low level. You have to use a good bit of it for it to work. But in the early stages, it just might work. What I have seen, though, is progesterone that's over the counter doesn't only have progesterone in it. It has a lot of herbs, a lot of other stuff that you really don't know whether it's all that safe to be using over a long period of time.
What about women in my position where I've had a complete hysterectomy, yet I still experience the night sweats and some of the other menopausal symptoms?
Well, having a hysterectomy is surgical menopause. You just went through everything in one moment. Women will wake up from surgery having hot flashes. A lot of times right in the operating room, they'll put a patch, an estrogen patch on you right from the start, expecting that to happen. That's very common. That's withdrawal from estrogen. When the estrogen levels are declining, when they're dropping, then you get the hot flashes. That's a response in the blood vessels. Blood vessels are opening and closing on you.
Why am I craving foods that are not so good for me?
Well, I bet you the foods that you're craving are the cookies and the pastas and the carbohydrates. That's, again, from an estrogen dominance. Estrogen will cause your insulin to go up. That'll cause you to crave carbohydrates. There's a need to balance that insulin, and the body will crave that carbohydrate until it satisfies that insulin demand. The problem is if you continue to eat carbohydrates, you're going to continue to produce more insulin, so it's a never-ending thing. So what you have to do is lower the amount of estrogen or balance it with more progesterone.
Why are we more prone to anxiety and depression?
Okay, well, those are two different issues. Anxiety comes from an estrogen dominance. Same thing. Estrogen's high, progesterone is proportionally too low. Depression comes from a low estrogen, a sustained low estrogen, because estrogen has an impact on the level of serotonin. When the estrogen is high, the serotonin goes up and vice versa. And serotonin has a direct effect on the mood.
What I want to know is, do men go through midlife? I mean, I know for us, it's this menopause thing, but what happens to men?
Men do go through that same problem. Progesterone in women slides 2 to 3% a year. Testosterone in men slides 2 to 3% a year. So you have this gradual tapering, you have this gradual reduction in the amount of progesterone, and in the case of men, testosterone. The thing that happens to women is that they lose their estrogen all at one time. The progesterone decline takes about 20 years, and that same thing happens to a man. You get kind of used to it as you're going along. You don't notice. It's like a little wee bit each year. You don't pay any attention to it. It's not that big of a significance. But when you look back and you're 40, you say, boy, I used to be able to do this when I was 20, and you wonder why. Well, that's why. Between 38 and 40, you're not going to see a difference.
I'm being prescribed Fosamax for bone thinning, osteopenia. Is there anything I have to worry about or pay attention to as far as taking that drug?
Well, Fosamax, probably the biggest problem with Fosamax is the damage it does to the alimentary canal. If you don't get it down into the stomach and keep it there, it's going to burn your esophagus. You know, when you take Fosamax, you have to take it after you get up out of bed, then you have to stay upright. You either have to be standing or sitting for at least a half an hour after you take it. You have to drink it down with a full glass of water to make sure you washed it down into the stomach. And you have to take it on an empty stomach because it doesn't absorb very well. You only get about 5% absorption of the Fosamax. And So you have to give it a chance to absorb before you put any food in there to compete with it.
Call Yakim's Compounding Pharmacy, 1-800-368-3112. Thank you so much for your interest. Please call Mr. Yakim today for your free personal consultation.